everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Tales from the Doghouse Separation Anxiety Explained. I am Stacey Bell in the US with Focused Fun, and with me today is...
Hello, I am Ness Jones. I am in Australia, and today we are going to be talking about a topic which I think a lot of people might struggle with. So Nancy, shout out to Nancy, who's in my Facebook group. She posted a question which I thought is quite relevant and worthy of talking about because it applies to a lot of people. So I'm just it's probably easier if I just read the question or
Sure.
bits of it, just so I get it right. So she's been doing some training and she's been doing, warm-ups to absences. And she says she always manages her absences, which is good. We like that.
Yay!
So she wasn't able to keep her dog, be with her dog. She wasn't doing training. She had to go out. She managed her absence. She took her dog to her neighbors, who also has a dog with separation anxiety, apparently.
Oh, wow.
So the neighbor texted her just before she was coming to pick her dog up that she needed to leave unexpectedly and that the dogs were going to be home alone. So when Nancy got there, she says, she snuck up to the house. Can you imagine going sneak, up to the house?
Her little ninja outfit.
Yeah. She snuck up to the house and she didn't hear a peep from either of the dogs. She opened the door and her dog and her cat were calm and laying on the couch. She said, I was talking to them and my dog, her neighbor's dog, sorry. She was talking to those two dogs that lived there, or the cat and the dog, and her dog wasn't around. So she said, finally, after I called her name, she came out from the bedroom. How can she be there alone and not bark when she's at my house? I can't get past 30 seconds. So it's a question, and I think it's a really valid question because why is the dog struggling with me when I'm trying to leave them, and yet I take them somewhere else and they're still alone, but there's a dog and a cat with them, but they're still in a different bedroom as well. So and I think a lot of people struggle with that because I'm sure you've heard it as well, Stacey, where you get the ones that say they can't be left home alone, but I can leave them in the car for hours and they're fine.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've had ones that kind of similar to what she's experiencing there, where they were not okay at their house, but they were okay at like their parents' house or a friend's house or something like that. And, it's kind of unexpected because a lot of times that's not the case. But when it is the case, it's, first of all, for me, it's like a yay, because it can be a management tool, because it sounds like her neighbor's dog was also okay when she got home, although, it'd be great if we had some video proof of that. But it sounds like both dogs were doing well in that situation. So, they might be able to use that as a management strategy. I mean, she would still want to train at home, but when she's not training, or if she has to go out or something, and even if her neighbor's not there, it could be a way to manage absences.
Yeah, for sure. So I think we have to ask the question why, though, don't we? So so it could be a few different reasons. One of them is simply that at your house, or where the dog is reactive, that they've just got that association. Maybe they've had a bad experience there, and they associate being home alone in that particular house, in that particular place, with a scary absence. Right. It could be something as simple as that. And so you take them somewhere else, and they've not built that association. So
right.
Yeah.
And it could also be another person leaving them, right? Like in this case, her neighbor left her dog instead of her leaving her dog. And for some dogs, even in their own home, it's easier if one person leaves over another. So that could definitely contribute to it as well.
Yeah. And one thing Nancy didn't mention, so I don't have that data, is her dog hyper attached to her, perhaps? So maybe she's okay as long as there's some creature. Obviously, it doesn't have to be a human person. Like maybe she's okay with another dog and a cat, although she was in a different room, but she would have known they were there. But you know, maybe there's an element of that. Maybe not even hyper attachment, but she just needed some company, not to be alone.
And while that's more the exception than the rule, there are always exceptions to the rule. So that certainly could be the case for this particular dog.
Yeah. So I guess what is the message then? That, you know, it's kind of normal in many senses.
Yeah. I think it's just like when we talk about using a different door if your dog has a lot of baggage associated with one door in the house or with one room in the house. You know, dogs have experiences, and in their minds they make connections between those experiences and the way they felt in those experiences, and then that can you know, kind of be the baggage in future scenarios that mimic that setup, if you will. So, you know, if you are noticing that there are some setups or scenarios that your dog does better in, then I would encourage you to take advantage of that, especially earlier in training, even if it's not like my dog is totally okay, even if it's just like, well, this is easier for my dog. I would definitely take advantage of those opportunities for your dog to establish kind of a foundation of being home alone isn't scary. Just so to give you kind of some traction in training, because that early training can seem like you're just taking these tiny baby steps. If there are things that make it easier, then go for it.
Yeah, I think what would be interesting is if Nancy was leaving, if her neighbor wasn't home and Nancy was leaving her dog there, so it was her doing the leaving, not the neighbor. That would be interesting to see if the dog reacts differently. And remembering also that you know, it's hard for dogs to watch their significant people leave. So so that, I think it would be interesting to know if that dog would struggle at the neighbor's house if it was Nancy leaving. So is that a kitty cat?
Yeah.
There's a little movement. Oh, look. Oh, look, tail. Yeah, there she is. Oh,
so helpful. So helpful.
I think it's a really good point, though, what you're making about the association. Like for us, we can reason a bit more. So we can say, well, I shut my finger in the door, but it was an accident, and that doesn't make the door evil or scary. It just means that I shut my finger in the door because I was being clumsy. And I'm a Capricorn, and, you know, as a Capricorn, we are quite clumsy people. So I expect to do clumsy things. But for a dog, that association can be, oh, my God, that door's really scary. So not realizing that it was just an accident, maybe the wind blew onto them when they were going through, you know, onto their tail, whatever it is. And, you know, it's really easy for them to join some dots that probably aren't there.
And my particular dog, Rowan, is very, you know, very prone to making connections, you know, where there's not necessarily one. So we work very hard to, you know, make sure that he doesn't have experiences that are going to end up being like, oh, I'm never going to walk in this hallway again because, you know, the cat jumped out at me and now the hallway is scary or whatever. So, but it's true. And the other thing I just wanted to mention that's kind of along these same lines is sometimes we do see that when a dog moves, or when the family or person moves to a new house, that we see after the dog's had some time to get familiar or settle in the house, that it is easier for them in the new setting. And that's usually because, like you were mentioning earlier, Ness, that they haven't had those negative experiences. Because at this point, you know, you're managing absences, you're giving them time to settle, you're making sure that their exposures to being home alone in this new setting are all neutral or positive. And so the dog is just frequently, in my experience, able to gain more duration more easily than they were, particularly if the dog is noise sensitive, and or maybe even not, but if they were noise sensitive in an apartment. But anyway, so that's another thing to kind of think about as well.
Yeah, and that's a really good point too. So a city dog might struggle in the country, a country dog might struggle in a city, a dog that's in an apartment that's struggling, and they move to a house and it's quieter and they haven't got the maybe noise of neighbors or lifts or whatever. They might do better.
Right.
But of course, moving's not always an option. So
no, moving is not always an option. So, you do what you can.
Yeah. I don't know if Nancy's got any other animals in her home, as in other cats or dogs or anything. She hasn't mentioned that, so it'd be interesting to know. But obviously, the dog is still struggling in her house. Not
right.
Yeah.
I mean, so she could gently test that out by having her neighbor's dog come over and see. Does that buy her a little more duration in that setting?
The only problem with that is she did mention that her neighbor's dog's also got separation anxiety. So it would just being a little bit mindful and making sure that dog's not going to struggle.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I had forgotten that. Fostering is always another option. Fostering
test the waters.
To adopt. Yeah, because I think we've talked about this on other shows too, is that sometimes you get a dog to help your existing dog, but then there might be some other tensions between the two dogs. Maybe they have different play styles, or maybe there's some resource guarding, or maybe the new one is a barker at sounds and then that sets your dog off, or maybe there's so many things, right? So making sure that the dogs, if you're getting a dog, get the dog for you, not for your dog, but then also make sure that it's a good fit, because then if not, then it does kind of open up a whole new can of worms.
Yeah, totally. But and look, we know there's rescues and they're always looking for foster people, so
they sure are
a nice option if you're confused, if you're not sure. But just be aware also that getting another dog doesn't necessarily mean it's going to help your dog with their home.
Yeah, and it usually doesn't, but there are some exceptions, like we said.
Yeah. So what about the dogs that are okay in cars? I mean, it's obviously the significant human is, we're going to say, the one leaving them in the car, as opposed to the situation where it was the neighbor leaving the dog.
Right.
So I think there we could maybe say that dog hasn't had a negative association with being left in the car.
And I think a lot of times in the car, and especially if you have your dog as a puppy, because you're not really sure what they're going to chew on or when they might need to go potty again. You usually start out with really short absences in the car, right? And so maybe that kind of starting out with really short absences, just running to grab your food from the takeout spot, or whatever, maybe that paves the way for initially more positive connections that the dog is making. With cars, we always want to make sure that that the weather is appropriate for you leaving your dog in the car, unless you have like a Tesla or another fancy car that has like dog mode on it. That
haven't heard of this.
It has dog mode, right? It's an electric car and it has dog mode, and so it'll keep the temperature of the car at a good level for your dog, whatever you set it at, without it's not running like gas. It's just using the battery. And then there's more cars that are starting to come out with that feature. So
you'd want to make sure it was working though, wouldn't you? Imagine if it died away.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, it's
Yes.
like you can't leave cars, you can't leave dogs in cars here at the moment. The temperature's
Yeah.
starting to soar, and it's not.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's definitely, I mean,
I'd
you
be too
really,
paranoid to
really,
do that, I think.
yeah.
You'd be like, oh well, I'm going to go to the shops or go and do something for an hour, but I'll leave the dog in the car and dog.
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, what if it cuts out halfway through or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah.
I could do it.
I mean, I don't think I've heard of that happening, but I mean,
Yeah.
things malfunction, right? So, um, but anyway, so there, yeah, you just have to be really careful when you're leaving your dog in the car for that reason.
Yeah, yeah. But it is interesting that, they don't have that. I mean, some dogs do struggle in the car,
Hmm.
So it's often
Hmm.
with cars too. You hear about the dogs that at the petrol station, and you get out to get the petrol, and they're barking their heads off and carrying on.
Hmm.
Maybe it's comes under the category of separation related behaviors, but it may be not necessarily separation
Yeah.
anxiety, as opposed to frustration, FOMO. I can see you, I know you're there. Cars are
Right.
exciting. We
Right.
always go to the park when we're in the cars, and oh, here there's kitty cat again.
It's very helpful today.
um, yeah, so they get that element of frustration and stuff.
Yeah, and I think and the other thing that you would have to be aware of is some dogs, like if somebody approaches your car or come nears your car while they're in the car, that unsettles them or makes them fearful or whatever. So that's another thing to think about is know your dog. Even if the dog is okay with the being alone in the car piece of it, if it's going to make them anxious if somebody walks by the car or something like that, then that's probably not a good fit either.
Yeah, just off topic. So Chase, the dog behind me on the wall, the Malinois,
Uh-huh.
she's really good in the car. Like she's friendly with people, and she doesn't.
Hmm.
Every now and then there'll be some bloke that, I don't know if she thinks they're sneaking up on the car, and she'll
Yeah.
get this really low guttural,
Hmm.
like whoa. And when she does that, when they walk past, I'm like looking at them like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're a
Make
bit
sure your
sus.
car door is locked.
Oh yeah, I'm ready to
Yeah.
let her out if I need to.
Yeah. Rowan is the same way. He's like you. I mean, he's not like the most chill dog to begin with, as far as um strangers go, but like when we're out and about, we can walk around and he's not gonna be bothered by anything. But sometimes when we're in the car and there's like somebody walking by, like you said, like he'll be like, no, I'm suspicious of you, and he'll do like a little bit of a growl. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. How do you think we've covered all the key
I
points?
think so. I
Yeah.
think so. And I think if there are obviously other factors that are tangential to what we're talking about here, as far as what makes it easier or harder for your dog to be alone. And we talked about that in a podcast, I think, on scenarios. So if you are interested in learning about how other things might affect how easy or hard it is for your dog to be alone, then that would be one to listen to.
Yeah, yeah, and just we understand that it is confusing, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not abnormal for your dogs to do
Mm-hmm.
this. Nice if we can figure out why they're doing it, because that can help us. What's the right word?
Well, it can help us make training decisions and set your
Yeah,
dog
yeah,
up for
yeah.
success, right? And so, I mean, I think it's just kind of a plug for doing some record keeping. When you see those trends as to, wow, every time I train at night, it's easier for my dog, or my dog's more successful when I train on the weekends, or like whatever the case is for your particular dog. Just knowing that can really help us formulate a more tailored training plan for your dog and to set you guys up for success. So I think that's an important piece of it. But the bottom line is, if you notice that your dog is okay at your friend's house, when your friend leaves them, then that's great. I mean, you just, so you have that information now, you know that your dog can do it. So you could use that as a management strategy. Or if you notice that your dog can be home longer when at certain times of day or whatever, you just take that into account, and you just meet your dog where they are in that specific scenario.
Yeah.
So I think it is important to just note those things as far as training goes.
Yeah. And if you're starting out with your training, we do want to do the scenario, the training at the time the dog's going to struggle the least. It's really, really important. You don't want to make it hard for your dog. So we call it setting them up for success, but we don't make it, we just want to make it easy. So, do it when they've had some exercise, some enrichment, when the time of day is right for them, when they're ready to rest, when they're not hungry, when they don't need to go to the loo, all that stuff. So
right.
Make it as easy on your dog as you possibly can. And then you can worry about the harder scenarios down the track. But yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. All right. We're good.
All right. Yep.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Doghouse, Separation Anxiety Explained. Make sure you hit the subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube, and if you're listening to us on in your ears on a podcast, then yes, subscribe there as well, or follow, or whatever it is. They're all different.
Do the things. Do all the things.
Yeah, and also we work remotely, Stacey and I. So if you need our help, reach out. We're here.
Sure thing. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.